We just crossed 4 months since the initial release of Cyberpunk 2077, and as a bit of a surprise, CD Projekt Red did drop hotfix 1.21 for the game today. This definitely not quite being on the scale of a full-on patch or update like Update 1.2 that had hundreds of changes, but still is a fairly significant patch. If you play on consoles, you've probably noticed you woke up today to an extra 25GB download for Cyberpunk. So in this video, I want to go over some of the most notable things you can expect from this and a bit of a background as to what this does and doesn't fix. So one of the first things to go over is that actual download size. On PC, this was a mere 500 megabytes, while on consoles, again, it was approaching 25 gigabytes in total, despite the fact that this is largely a smaller patch. The big reason for that is basically due to the way patches are shipped on console. Let's say just one line of code was changed in a larger file structure. You're gonna have to download that entire archive again. So the actual size of the changes is probably much closer to that PC's 500 megabytes, but you're re-downloading a ton of extra stuff that you technically already have when downloading this on console, which is frustrating, annoying, but just the reality with how this stuff works, unfortunately. One of the biggest focuses of this patch overall was fixing more of that progress blocking content. This is a huge focus of the past patch also with 1.2, but there were several things that either slipped through the cracks or just didn't make it into the last one. In particular, some of the jobs around cyber psychos and gigs in Night City. There's several achievements around completing, for example, all of the cyber psycho sightings, and unfortunately, several bugs that were making it so some were not completing. This patch addressed several of them. If this is one of the problems you are having in game, there's a decent chance this actually fixed it. So if you were one job away from an achievement and you couldn't figure out what wasn't working, I would definitely load up the game and give it another try after this one. It also made it so things like holo calls from Mitch no longer get stuck and repeat on your screen. Sometimes Johnny Silverhand had some very odd or glitched out appearances, and this actually fixes that even further. One of the quests to get a bunch of fixes was Riders on the Storm, this being that Panam focused quest. They fixed it so Saul will no longer follow you if you kind of leave the quest zone. You could leave the quest zone and have Saul still following you, make it almost like you had a makeshift companion following you around, but they fixed that. And also they fixed one of the issues where the sandstorm that does appear during this quest could actually follow you to Night City if you fast traveled. This was honestly kind of cool. I wish it was a rare weather type that would just spawn from time to time anyway. One of the other really big changes, and of course one that's getting a lot of attention, is further refinement of the NCPD spawns. Now if you're on a building or a rooftop high off the ground and you get wanted, the NCPD will no longer spawn behind you on that rooftop. This was somewhat fixed with the last patch and some of the changes brought to the table, but not completely. But as you can see here with the most recent 1.21 patch, if I am wanted this high up, it's basically like nothing happens. Nobody ever came after me, which in a way it almost feels like there should be another addition here somewhere. I feel like I shouldn't be able to just take out civilians casually on this rooftop and nobody ever responds. One of the smaller issues fixed with this one was climbing ladders when getting out of water would sometimes just glitch out and not work. That was actually fixed, this being particularly helpful on some of those underwater quests. One that I'm really confused on is it said scanner UI is now less cluttered. I assume this is referring to your optical scanner, but I literally can't notice much of any difference between the old and the new. I've looked online and many people have the exact same reaction to me. Maybe there's a different scanner this is referring to, but also in the world of quick hacks, they added back the distract enemies icon when enemies are actually distracted by something, with the last major change being various memory management improvements, reducing the number of crashes. And it seems like early reports do actually suggest this was somewhat effective. In the first few hours following this patch, people who were having crashing problems before seem to be crashing a bit less often. So overall, a relatively small one. If you're wondering, is FPS better on either consoles or PC, I've noticed absolutely no difference. Testing this both on my PC and in Xbox One X, I still get frame drops on both PC and Xbox One X from time to time while playing this game. It's obviously much better after patch 1.2, in particular on consoles, but this didn't really seem to have a big impact on that. When it comes to some of those quest bugs that are being addressed with this one, there's sometimes an issue where you may notice you read in the patch notes like fixed a progress blocking bug on Assault and Progress in Japantown. Sometimes in your existing save, you may have actually embedded that bug in the save and you can't actually fix it. It seems like for most of the cyber psycho as well as Assault in Progress based bugs, it was resolved. But if you are having a problem where it says this is supposed to be fixed, but in your game on your save you have a bug and it's not being fixed, it might just be that you kind of are screwed on that save. Unfortunately, it seems like that's happened to several people now. And even further, unfortunately, this is not a comprehensive pass on all of these progress blocking bugs, or even some of the more well-known ones. There's still some issues like with the Mr. Hands quest where you're supposed to call him, the Sweet Dreams Dreams quest with Stefan being missing, and even certain Cyber Psycho related bugs do still exist, even though that was a major focus of this patch overall. If you're somebody who just downloaded this and is immediately crashing when launching the game, it seems like for whatever reason there's a niche group of players that always runs into this problem with some of these updates. I actually had a similar issue on Xbox where I immediately crashed after trying to play Cyberpunk after this update, but it seems like specifically for Steam users, for one reason or another, after some updates you have to actually verify the integrity of your game files. Like in the updating process, some files get corrupted and lead to crashing after the fact. Sometimes people get a decompression error around this, so I would recommend trying that fix, and if not, perhaps you have to dig a bit further, or it could be related to mods you are using. And unfortunately, this didn't address some of those other lingering issues, like minimap zoom while driving in cars, the ping quick hack now alerting enemies for some reason, among a variety of other things. So really, it's another one of those smaller updates that is definitely an incremental step in the right direction. Rather unfortunate, in particular for console users, that you have a massive 25 gigabyte download, especially for the people that are going to come home from work, want to play some Cyberpunk, and get hit with that immediately for what is largely some relatively small or minor changes. Which, speaking of, this one is interesting. We don't really know much about what's coming next with this game, but there are a lot of lingering questions that hopefully are answered at some point soon. It's been 2 weeks since the last and bigger 1.2 update. So now going forward, it's not really clear. Are we going to get hotfix patches like this one that are smaller but perhaps a bit more frequently? Like in another 2 weeks we can expect another, maybe 2-3 weeks down the road? But also with how many problems this game even still does have, or how many more updates like this is it going to take? Playing this game to a certain degree, it just kind of feels like it has an existing level of jank, almost akin to Fallout 76 after it got some of its big updates. It's going to take quite a few more months for that to start to go away, I think, or not to mention some of the fundamental features just not working at all. 4 months later, Cyberpunk 2077 is still not on the PlayStation Store, and CDPR stock has been doing really bad. Since this game did release, it has just been a gradual decline. Even after some of those big drops, things are just kind of trending downward. We're going to get some big news around CDPR and Cyberpunk very shortly though, as on April 19th they are posting their fiscal year 2020 earnings. This will likely feature some kind of Q&A, but more importantly, actual numbers as far as copies sold, pre-orders, things like that for Cyberpunk. You can expect a lot of headlines around this, and perhaps even some details about what's coming next, like that DLC. Based on the roadmap they released earlier in 2021, we know the DLC is coming at some point this year. In a past video, we did go over some of the leaks with the DLC, including a romance DLC that is seemingly on the way. You can check that out if you're interested. But the future is definitely curious for Cyberpunk 2077. It still finds itself in kind of an odd state, and I don't really know what to make of this update. Is it the rate of progress we can come to expect going forward, where patch 1.2 was more of an outlier, although patch 1.2 did take 2.5 months to actually make, so that was a lot of time devoted to that one. Either way, that's the update, that's what you can expect from it, and that's some of the stuff you can expect going forward. If you enjoyed this one, you can get subscribed. I'll definitely keep you up to date with whatever happens around Cyberpunk 2077. But until next time, I thank you all again for watching. I hope to see you all later.